Plumbing Solutions educational series. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about troubleshooting a low pressure issue in a house. We do primarily new construction, residential plumbing, and that is an issue that comes up a lot where there's low pressure because there's construction material or sand or glue or something that got stuck somewhere in the system and it's restricting that flow. Now, we use a lot of tankless water heaters nowadays, and a low pressure issue and a no hot water issue kind of go hand in hand because those tankless water heaters have to have a certain flow rate to fire them up and to keep them running. So when these calls come in, a lot of times the homeowner tells the dispatcher it's the whole house. I don't have any hot water in the whole house, low water pressure in the whole house, and that may be the case, but something I found out as a technician, a lot of times you get out there and you talk to the homeowner or the builder and they're like, oh no, it's just this one fixture we don't have hot water at, or or low pressure issue, and then you can go to that fixture and start tracing your way back. But the first thing I recommend doing when you go on one of those calls is go out there in the garage and take a look at this guy. All of our houses are going to have one of these. We call them a PRV. That's a pressure regulating valve, and it's got this bolt on the end of it. If that bolt is poking way out like that, it's never been adjusted. I think these things come set at about 40 psi with that bolt out like that. You're going to want more than that. I recommend 75 with the tankless water heater houses. I'll let it go up as high as 80. We test our water lines at 100 to 120 pounds of pressure during our tests, so you're going to be okay at 80. I like to keep it there to keep that flow rate up, to keep those tankless water heaters working for you. So check that bolt. Now, when adjusting these things, you are going to need a gauge, and you're going to put this on at the hose bib. You're going to turn it on and see what you're reading while you adjust this. Now, you are going to want to let the pressure off and then put it back on there, turn the water on. Don't just let it sit there static, because it's not going to give you a good reading when you're trying to adjust this. You're going to have to let the water off and then turn it back on to get a good reading on your gauge. But that's where you're going to want to start. Start with your PRV, check that bolt. If you're still having the problem, we'll go through some other things here. So if it's isolated at a fixture, say they say, oh, it's just my master shower, or it's just the shower in the hall bath, you're going to want to take the shower head off. And I've had a lot of people say, well, what does the shower head have to do with me not having any hot water? Well, tankless water heaters work off of a flow rate. They have to have at least a gallon a minute, 1.2 gallons a minute to fire up, and then they'll keep running at about 0.8. Anything less than that, and it's just going to shut down. It's not going to know what to do. These new shower heads come with this little blue thing in here, and that is what they call a water saver. It reduces the flow. It saves you water in the long run. These work great with the old tank conventional style water heaters, but not so much with your tankless because of that flow rate. You're either going to want to take that out completely or get that little rubber O-ring out of there. If you can get that little, take a pair of needle nose pliers or a little screwdriver, pop that little O-ring out, it's not going to work anymore. You're going to have your flow rate. About the worst thing you can do with these guys is take a screwdriver and just bash that thing into there and break it all into little pieces. If that's the only option you have, you got to get all of those little pieces out, because leaving them in there can cause this shower head to act like it's clogged. They can whistle as that thing's rattling around in here, but you're going to want to get all those pieces out of there. Don't let that go in there. Check it. That water saver may be the cause if it's isolated at a shower. The other thing, if that water saver's knocked out and you're still at that shower and you still know, everything else is fine but my shower, go to your shower valve. Take the trim off, and once you get the trim off, now turn the water off, drain the house down before you go pulling one of these valves out, because it will shoot at you. Once you take this ring off, it's going to pop and it's going to shoot at you, and you'll probably do that once. But on your Delta valves, it's got a retaining ring that's hand tight. Don't put a pair of pliers on this, because the plumber in 20 years is absolutely going to hate you. because these are supposed to be hand tight. Now, after a period of time, you are going to have to use a pair of pliers on these to get them off, but be very careful with it. And then you're going to pop your valve out. Pull that thing out. It's got little, now this is a thermostatic valve. We don't use these a whole lot, but pull that out, stick your finger up in here. Make sure there's no dirt, rocks, pipe dope, whatever. When you're at this stage, you might want to go back out in the garage and bump that water on, blow whatever's in there out if you can. And then, of course, you're going to put it back together and put your ring back on there. And then check, see what happened. If you got good flow, you found the problem. The other style valve that we use that's really popular is the mowing valve. Now, in order to get this one out, there's a little clip right here at the top. Now, once these things are pressurized, it kind of blows this out a little bit. That clip's kind of hard to get out of there. You might have to take a little screwdriver to pop it, but you pull that clip off. Don't lose the clip. You've only got one of them. I hate having to buy a whole valve for a clip, but this cartridge will also come out of there. You can wiggle it on out. Same thing as that. Pull it out, clean the dirt off of it, put it back together, check, see if that fixed the problem. If not, you're going to have to continue to troubleshoot. Now, say that homeowner said, oh, well, it's only at the faucet in my master bathroom on the left side. Well, go to that faucet. First place I would check is your aerator. Of course, turn it on, see if that water's spraying out all kind of weird or whatever. It give you kind of an idea of what's happening. They have aerators. Now, the Delta aerators have a key that you can't just take it off like that. You got to have the special key, or you can get on it with a pair of needle nose pliers and turn it out of there. Now, the purpose of an aerator, a lot of people don't know this, it puts air in that water stream. And you might ask, well, why you want to do that? It's so you can see it. I mean, water is odorless, tasteless, and colorless, right? So you can't see it when it's on. It gives it a little bit of noise, and it gives it that white, milky kind of color so you can see the water coming out by putting air bubbles in it. Now, get in there and look at that screen right there. It probably has some sand. I think there's all of them have a little bit of sand or something on them. But clean that off. The other thing is these do have a water saver in them as well. Faucets they're not a big deal with the hot water and the water saver thing, but it doesn't hurt to take that out if you're dealing with a low pressure issue. And what you do is just get a pair of pliers, squeeze the sides, pop that little white screen off, don't lose it, save that, and there's your little aerator. Sometimes they're pink, sometimes they're green, but it's the same principle. It's got that little O-ring, but with these, they come out so easy. Just chunk that, put your screen back on there. You're going to want to put that screen back on because there's little holes in here that can get all clogged up. Wash this out really good. I recommend doing it backwards. And then put that guy back together and turn it on and see what happens. Sometimes the sand, little fine particles of sand can get up in here and clog up those little holes, and at that point you either need to get another aerator to replace it, or get you a little what do they call it, a jet cleaning tool. It's a bunch of little little metal toothpick looking things, and you can get in there and poke all those holes out. That's the way I used to do it. Now, if that doesn't fix the problem and you're still at a fixture, the next thing I would recommend, pull those stops out, take supply lines down, put them in a 5-gallon bucket, turn those stops on, see if you can get anything out of it. If it's dirt, sand, junk like that, a lot of times it's right there at that valve. Turn that valve on and off, look in your bucket, see what you're getting, see if you're getting any sand. If you do have good pressure at your supply lines, then you know it's somewhere in that faucet, and dirt and stuff can get blown up into here. You can take these cartridges out. They're pretty easy to get to, or it might be so bad off you have to replace this. Now, if it's not isolated at a fixture, the next place you need to go is back to that PRV. Now, these things do come apart, and a lot of people don't know that, and I've seen a lot of our technicians just cut this out of the system and put a brand new one on there. You can do that, but then you've wasted $80. But The irrigation guys, a lot of times when they're doing their stuff, they're not as clean as plumbers are as far as sand, glue, and debris and stuff in their water lines, because they're going to blow their stuff out before they put their heads on. They're used to doing it. But what happens when they do that, they blow their little rain or shine glue or whatever up into this guy. Or if you've had to make a repair out in the field, it's late at night, there's a possibility you can blow junk into this thing as well. Now, they do come apart. And before trying to take it apart, turn the water off, drain the water down, run this bolt back out because there's a spring in here. And you don't want that all tight with all that pressure, because when you take this off, it'll shoot across the room. You can lose your spring, you can lose your spring cap, and then you're just going to have to replace it anyway. But it's got little knots around here that a pair of pliers can fit on. Now I've taken this one apart a few times, so I should just be able to undo it. Yep. That black plastic cap unscrews. Some of them have a brass cap, and I like the brass cap ones better. They seem to hold up a lot longer. But when you take that out, as you see, there's a spring, and the spring cap normally stays in there because it's got grease on it, but it's like a little dime or a little washer thing that sits on your spring that contacts the bottom of that bolt. So hang on to that, don't lose that, that's important. The next thing you got here is a little diaphragm. Now when these things are brand new, that's going to be really hard to get out. You can take a little teeny flathead screwdriver and try to get up under the edges and pry at it, but be careful, don't break this plastic edge. A trick that I've found when you're dealing with a new one, get you a little pair of channel locks, grab the edge like that and kind of give it a little twist, and just twist until it pops out. Then there's your screen, and a lot of times I run into it, I pull this out, that is full of thread sealant, pipe dope, glue, sand, trash. I even had one that was full of mulch one time, and it was packed full. Well, go borrow the neighbor's spigot, wash that off really good, get that clean. The screen does come off of there. Make sure your little diaphragm is sliding back and forth and there's nothing stuck up in there. The next thing I recommend while you've got this off, get your little bucket, hold it up there. You're going to have your ball valve right beneath it. Turn that on for just a second, blow whatever's in here out, make sure this chamber is clean, and then you simply go back the other way. Now when putting it together, don't just leave it sticking up like that. Take your hand, press it in there, make sure those O-rings seal and it's back down like that. The next thing would be your cap, your spring cap and your spring. Put it up in there, and you're going to line your spring up on that metal thing with the little nut and put it back together. If it is a whole house issue that you're dealing with, a lot of times it's junk in here. The other thing is certain water companies, certain counties, I know Gilbert, they put one of these on at the meter. Elgin puts one of these on out at the meter. So know where you are. I know City of Columbia doesn't do it, but there are other counties out there that part of their requirement is a pressure regulating valve out at the meter. So you might end up with two of these. Go check out at the meter and make sure that that city guy ran that bolt down, because that'll have you running around looking too. The next thing would be if it's just a no hot water issue, and you've got low pressure on the hot side, but you've got plenty good pressure on the cold side. You can test that at a faucet by turning these handles on and seeing what your pressures are doing. Your hot water pressure is always going to be just a touch below your cold water side because it's running through that water heater. All of your tankless water heaters have a screen on them. This is located at the base of the water heater underneath the pipe cover where the isolation valves come up. Turn those isolation valves off, open up your pressure relief to get all the pressure off of it. This should be hand tight. Now, when they're brand new and it's never been taken out before, you might have to grab it with a little pair of pliers or get a big fat screwdriver on it. It is slotted across there. Take that out, take a look at it. I've seen some that have had just a little teeny bit of sand in it, and it has caused the whole thing to mess up. I've seen when these guys install it using the thread sealant or pipe dope, some people call it. The old thread sealant was could wash out with water. It was more water soluble, but the stuff they've got out there now, it's pretty thick. You're not just going to wash it off. You're going to have to take a little toothbrush or something, go over the spigot, wash this out really good. While you've got this out, go ahead and turn that cold water on just for a second, just like you did with this guy. Make sure you get those debris and stuff out of there. Put your screen back in, turn it on, see if you found it. If that doesn't do it and you're still kind of having an issue, another thing is pay attention to the neighborhoods you're in. If you're in a neighborhood and you know that this guy and that guy and that guy has 150 pounds of pressure coming out of their water meter because you've been out there adjusting PRVs, then the house you're working on is probably going to have 150 coming off the meter. It's got something stuck somewhere. So you're going to trace it on back to the water meter. And a lot of times we don't have these guys in front of the water meter, but I want to talk about this guy because you should know what's going on here in case anybody ever asks you a question about what are these things for. Some of the municipalities, some of the water companies out there, they require we put a backflow prevention device of some type at the water meter. Some of the meter setters have those things built into them, but this is a requirement for irrigation. It is called a backflow preventer. You don't want water that's already been in an irrigation system or already been in a house to come back into your main drinking water supply because it could contaminate everybody's drinking water. So that's what these guys are for. This one is called a dual check assembly, and the reason for that is it's got two checks inside of it. It's a little spring and a little seal, and there's two of them in case one fails. DHEC is real particular about these guys. They ask you to get these tested, but a lot of times if we get to this point, you're going to call me. I'm going to come out and help you out with it. We're really not going to mess with these, and there's certification and stuff that goes on with it, but I want to take this apart. I want to show you what's inside of it. Most of them are like this nowadays. Some of the older ones had actual ball with a spring in it, this big cylinder. You don't really see too much of those anymore. They're on the larger ones, you know, like your 1 inch and 4 inch and stuff like that. You still see some of those out there. Most of the time you're going to be dealing with a Apollo or a Febco. This one just happens to be a Wilkinson. These are the popular ones that are around, but they've done a very good job, just like they did with these valves. Everything's pretty much a cartridge now. That way when the cartridge fails, you don't have to chunk the whole valve. You can just pull the little cartridge out and replace it, and you're good to go. Now once you get the bolts out, this one has 4 bolts, some of them have 2 bolts. This one's a plastic housing here. Some of them are lead-free brass. It just depends on the brand, but it does have a little slot where you can stick a screwdriver in, pop that up, and you'll see the checks in here. And this one actually is full of dirt, which is probably why I have it, because they pulled it out not knowing that it was full of dirt and they couldn't get it to work. But there are these little checks in here. What you're going to do is push to get it to move, and your checks are going to pop right on out. There's your number 2 and your number 1 check. This is just an empty cylinder now. But if you see, it's a spring with a little check. And what this does is it lets water go one way, but it will not let it come back the other way. And of course there's 2 of them. A lot of times they're written on them what they are. This one says number 1 check, and this one doesn't have anything on it, but you know that's number 1. Anytime you're taking something apart, pay attention to it so you can put it back together and remember number 1 goes in like that, push that one in, and then you're going to push your number 2 in, and it's going to make a little noise. There it goes. And of course, put it back together. But these things can get full of trash, just like your PRV. They can get stuck open, they can get stuck closed, but like I said, most of the time, if you get to this point, you're going to have me come out and take a look at it. A lot of our technicians aren't going to be messing with these, but it's good to know what it is and what it does, and That's the whole reason why I took this guy apart, to show you. Hopefully by now in your troubleshooting, you found that dirt was in your faucet, it was a water saver left in your shower head, something stuck in your valve, but most of the time it's going to be a bunch of glue and garbage in here left over from the irrigation guys or the landscapers. And then of course, if it's just a no hot water issue, that screen's going to be a big deal. There's a lot of other issues out there that can cause you not to have hot water, but we'll go over that when we get down and dirty with our water heaters. But that's pretty much it. Once you get to this point and you haven't been able to figure it out and you still got low water pressure, call the city, get them to come out, get them to test it. Maybe they've got something wrong with their water meter or one of their regulators.